Good morning. Today is September 11th, 2020. You are listening to Counterculture with Aaron Lujan, where I cover the top news stories of the day. This will be a, God willing, 30-minute podcast, and we are covering the news that the mainstream corporate media either spins to psychologically damage your brains or just entirely omits because it does not fit their narrative. So if you're looking for an alternative to news and information, you are lucky because you found the right place. And it's going to be quick, it's going to be fun, it's going to be good times. My top news story for the day is out of Fox News. Trump nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. Nomination was submitted by Christian Tybring-Gjedde, a member of the Norwegian parliament, citing a Israel-UAE peace deal. The nomination came out of the idea that he has done more for peace than any other previous nominees in history. You think about Kashmir, you think about North Korea, South Korea, bringing the troops home, de-escalation with Russia. The first president, I believe, since Carter to not bring us into a new war, but actually to de-escalate the situation and bring us out of wars. So I would have to agree. I think that was the litmus test for the Nobel Peace Prize, to be a ally and advance peace on Earth. So congratulations, President Trump. I doubt he'll win because he's hated for that very reason. If you do the math, the military-industrial complex controls the globe, or at least attempts to. Washington Post, in record interview for Bob Woodward's book, Trump said he knew coronavirus was deadly, even as he publicly downplayed the threat. Now, of course, this is out of the Washington Compost. If you don't believe me, I believe that the Washington Post is a captured intelligence operation used to push disinformation and propaganda upon the American people. So the article is angled in a position where Trump, let the American people down. He knew it was a deadly threat, but then downplayed it. If you read in between the lines, or actually if you have political memory, and if you remember when the coronavirus first broke out back in March, he was criticized by the mainstream media for not doing enough. Doing too much. If you remember, he shut down travel with China, and he took very drastic measures, was called a racist, if you remember, for cutting off travel with China. So that move in it by itself proves historically that the president took the measures, saw this as important, but didn't want to panic the American people. And he's been vindicated by science because it is, yes, a super flu, but is on par with as many mortality as pneumonia. So he didn't want to panic the American people. That was his statement. His press secretary has repeated that. But the Washington Post wants you to believe that downplaying it is equivalent to not taking it. Downplaying it is equivalent to not taking it seriously. So there you go. Thank you, Washington Post. The Political Insider, Atlantic editor admits story about Trump disparaging fallen soldiers could be wrong. A couple days ago, I reported the Atlantic and the rest of the corporate media followed in line that Trump was this awful anti-veteran person who called them losers and suckers who died in the Afghanistan and the Iraq War. Obviously, an attack on his pro-veteran, pro-America base. Now, the actual editor, Goldberg, admits that his 4 off-the-record anonymous sources may not have been correct and that the visit was indeed called off due to weather. So a little Michael Jackson moonwalking backwards. 21 people overall have denied that Trump ever made those comments, and over a dozen who had first-hand knowledge of events that took place during the trip in question. Liar, liar, pants on fire, Pinocchio knows, shut your mouth. The Federalist Papers has an article out, He Didn't Call Me a Loser. Wounded vet blasts anti-Trump propaganda featuring his image. If you've seen Bobby Henline, he's an Army vet with a disfigured face who was the only survivor out of 5 who were caught in an IED blast in Iraq, says that he was featured in a anti-Trump hit piece saying, I'm not a loser, I'm not a sucker. He never gave these people permission to use his image. When I actually first saw it, I was a little surprised that there were these Nobel veterans who were opposed to Trump, but I said, hey, this is the world we live in. Well, in fact, my instincts were correct. He was not part of that. His image was used without his permission. And he was quoted with Fox News saying, Trump, are we done lying to people? People, stop using me as your propaganda for your agenda. I'm not here for that. I don't know what Trump said, but I'm sure he didn't call me a loser. I didn't hear him call me a loser, so this has got to stop. Stop using my image. So I just want to put everybody out on notice that when you see all this anti-Trump propaganda, a lot of it is just, all of it is really just lies and using people's image without their permission. We are being attacked by the corporate anti-Trump media. You know, I was a never Trumper, and I opposed his presidency up until probably election day. And I will say now here first, I'm enthusiastically going to vote for the president. And I would like to thank the corporate media, because everything that you have done has proven that I was wrong in 2016. I really thought this was a bad guy. I really thought that we were going to get scammed. I really believed that I was wrong, but you guys proved me wrong. And your enthusiasm for destroying him has really convinced me that he is good for America. So thank you, George Stephanopoulos. Thank you, Anderson Cooper. Thank you. What's that young, handsome man's name? Rachel Maddow. Thank you, Richard. Daily Caller's got an article out. Joe Biden says the only person calling to defund the police is Donald Trump. Come on, man. The only person calling to defund the police is Donald Trump. Quote, look at his budget. He calls for cutting police funding for local, state, and local help by $400 million. Once again, he's pathological. Jill, where's my meds? Biden has said he supports redirecting officer funding. No, that is absolutely fake news. Trump has never said that. In fact, during the RNC, it was noted that he was calling in his own speech for more funding of local police departments. So I just think it's Weekend at Bernie's. If you're too young to know about the movie Weekend at Bernie's, look it up. He is just a taxidermy object. He's just not saying anything that, when he opens his mouth, either it doesn't make sense, it's nonsensical, it's not, it wouldn't pass a second grade English teacher's litmus test, or it's absolutely a lie. Like Trump wants to completely defund the police. Ridiculous. Speaking of Comedy Hour, Daily Caller is also reporting Joe Biden claims 6,000 military members dead from COVID. The real number is 7, not 6,000. DOD statistics show that the number of recorded coronavirus infections in the military is just over 40,000 with just 7 deaths. Sorry, Joe. Time to go back home into the basement and take your meds, bro. Black coffee break. The Gateway Pundit. Joe Biden arrives in Michigan, and he's greeted by a crowd. He's finally got a crowd of Trump supporters chanting 4 more years. 4 more years and 0 Biden supporters. Well, he is in Michigan, where he openly supported NAFTA. NAFTA destroyed the integrity of the hardworking men of Michigan. Michigan is one of the worst states for employment and for the opioid epidemic. It's actually one of the epicenters. And it has a lot to do with the fact that people can't make an honest living in Michigan anymore. But Big Joe, Creepy Joe's there speaking at an event in a Detroit suburb of Warren, where he's reportedly going to propose a new policy aimed at tackling offshoring. Why didn't you tackle it when you had 40 years to do so, Joe? That's the way it goes. Yahoo News, Biden loses his Florida lead as Latino voters shift to Trump. I apologize. It's Latinx. You guys heard of that? Latinx? We don't want to offend the 30 other genders, or I think there's 37 genders. So we have to add an X in the Spanish language, because if you speak Spanish, Latina is a woman, Latino is a man. I didn't realize counterculture was going to turn into a Spanish instruction this morning, but it is. So Joe Biden has seemingly lost his advantage. So Florida has to be won. Florida is a decisive state in the election. And if we all remember, Hillary Clinton Latino voters went Hillary 62-35 over Trump in 2016. Hillary crushed Trump in the Latino vote. It's a critical piece. It could be that swing component in Florida. And so if the Latinos decide to side with Trump, Florida could very well go to Trump's column and give Trump the presidency. Florida is an incredibly important battleground state. It always has been in my memory. I remember in the 2000 election, it all came down to Florida. And here we have Joe Biden losing his advantage, according to an NBC News Marist poll released Tuesday. A poll from the Miami Herald and Ben Dixon and Amandi International backed up the NBC's news findings, at least in Miami-Dade County. So Creepy Joe's in trouble. The Bongino report, 2 women indicted after allegedly stealing MAGA hat from 7-year-old boy outside the Democratic National Convention. If you guys haven't seen this video, it's incredibly disturbing. It's 2 women suffering from Trump deranged syndrome. A 7-year-old boy with a MAGA hat is with his mommy outside of the Democratic National Convention. And these women, if you want to call them that, rip the hat off of this 7-year-old boy and run away like children while screaming derogatory language, let's say. And this was caught on video. Olivia Winslow and Cameron Amy, both 21, were indicted by a grand jury on charges of second-degree robbery, second-degree conspiracy, endangering the welfare of a child, third-degree assault, attempted third-degree... sorry about that. That's why I need a producer. I can't read my notes. Offensive touching and felony hate crimes. This is great news, especially in whatever state that was in. Where was the DNC? I don't know. They face up to 15 years in prison. More than likely a liberal state. Was it Baltimore, Maryland? I don't remember. But anyways, the point is that you hear in the video this 7-year-old boy saying, "Mommy, mommy, I want my hat." You guys, we have adults assaulting children over Trump MAGA hats. This is not normal. This, or what did the liberals always say? Not cool. That's not cool. Moving to Corona Land, the BBC has an article out. Coronavirus social gatherings above 6 banned in England from September 14th onward. Enforced with a £100 fine if people fail to comply, doubling on each offense up to a maximum of £3,200. 2 households of any size are allowed to meet indoors or outdoors, or up to 6 people from different households outdoors. Rules will be in place for the foreseeable future. Risks being dispersed by police or fined for non-compliance. You guys, this is going to go on forever. The pandemic's going to be well over. These mandates are going to stay in place. These people are not going to give up their power. It's absolutely shocking because if you just peer into America's future, all you need to do is peer across the pond, because they're usually a couple months ahead of us with regards to the tyranny over in the UK. They don't have a Second Amendment, so they usually their tyrants are a little more bold, a little bit sooner. So if you want to know what's coming, you guys, this pandemic, this scam-demic, this plan-demic is going to be used to shut down society. No longer will we be able to sit across a dinner table from friends because the tyrants say so. It's time to wake up, you guys. Truth Out Stories has an article out. Sturgis bike rally projected to be linked to more than 266,000 COVID cases, according to researchers at San Diego State University. The same San Diego State University who's trying to normalize child abuse, pedophilia. Black coffee break. So I don't trust San Diego State. I don't trust their, quote, researchers. The article positions it as, well, it's going to be a $12 billion in public health costs. Well, if you listen to your the person you called voodoo doctor, we have a cure. It's hydroxychloroquine and zinc. And I forget what else the other ingredient was. So no, it doesn't have to cost $12 billion in public health costs. And I really don't trust San Diego State University. In fact, I think when you put out articles that say that when you have a bunch of pro-American people enjoying life and enjoying freedom is bad because it's going to create 266,000 COVID cases. All you're trying to do is demonize freedom. That's why I covered that story. The Ron Paul Forums has an article out. Vitamin D deficiency raises COVID-19 infection risk by 77%, study finds. Vitamin D deficiency. So essentially what the study showed is that if you guys have a sufficient amount of vitamin D in your body, you do not necessarily need to worry too much about COVID. It's not scary. If you're a healthy person, this is not scary. This is not what the media has been trying to tell you, that this is Armageddon, it's the end of the world. I know people personally right now that I could call on my phone who had it. Yeah, it was bad. It put them on their ass. They were out for a couple of days. But guess what? They're back and they're stronger. This is a super flu. It's not the Black Plague. And if you're healthy, you don't need to worry about it. Let me share the study with you. The vitamin D deficiency increases a person's risk for catching COVID-19 by 77% compared to those with sufficient levels of the nutrient, a study published Thursday by the JAMA Network Open. As many as 1 in 4 of the nearly 500 participants in the study were found to have less than optimal levels of vitamin D. Of the 60% of study subjects with adequate vitamin D levels, just 12% were infected. So a majority of the people who had a good amount of vitamin D, only 12% were infected. So if you want to prevent COVID, get out into the sun. Eat vitamin D rich foods. You don't need to hide in your couch with a mask on and run away from grandma. Break the fear, you guys. Fear is control. Fear is control. Fear is control. Vitamin D also may prevent the excess inflammation that is part of the challenge in managing severe COVID-19 cases. So where do you get this vitamin D? We'll go out into the sun. Sorry, Joker, aka Gavin Newsom. The sunshine is good for Californians. Also, what's good for vitamin D is fatty fishes such as salmon. Eggs has vitamin D. Mushrooms, and I'm not talking about shrooms. I'm talking about mushrooms, the ones you put on your pizza. Fortified foods, including most milk and dairy products. RT, Russian television, the 1% blunder. How a simple but fatal math mistake by the United States COVID-19 experts, air quotes, caused the world to panic and order lockdowns. So this is actually fascinating. This is like one of those things where if you've ever watched those fail army videos, or like the videos where people just completely fail, you know, they walk into walls or they do like belly flops in the pool when trying to be cool. This was like one of those things, but at a global scale, thanks to Fauci and our quote unquote experts. So the reason for lockdowns, what this article from RT purports, is it came from what Congress was told by the CDC and the World Health Organization experts, that we're all going to die, that there's going to be mass amounts of deaths if we don't lock down our economies and do social distancing and have masks. This 1%, if left unchecked, would kill around 1% of us. That's the equivalent of 3.2 million Americans. The global-backed health organizations and the pharmaceutical industry-backed health organizations put a gun to the head of the world and the American Congress and says, if you don't hand over your liberties, 3.2 million Americans are going to die in billions across the globe. Well, this 1% mistake is rooted in the difference between the infection rates and the case rates. All cases are infections, but not all infections are cases. It's the IFT number and the CFR number, the case fatality rate versus the infection fatality rate. They mixed them up. Congress was informed that the estimated mortality rate for the coronavirus was 10 times higher than for seasonal influenza, which helped launch the campaign for social distancing and all that. So my whole point in this is, why should we continue to trust them? Why do we still listen to these people when they had when they literally screwed this up by millions of people? They said we're going to die. And they messed up confuse the infection fatality rate with the case fatality rate. You guys, this entire lockdown is basically a math mistake. Are you done wearing your mask? Are you done social distancing and hiding in fear? Today it's a beautiful day in Colorado. Get out into the sun. Citizen Free Press. In the middle of the night, Governor Mike DeWine signed an order creating FEMA camps for asymptomatic COVID patients. Yes, we literally have the word FEMA camps by U.S. governors in the news in America. Ohio Department of Health Interim Director Lance Himes released an order on August 31st, an order creating federal emergency management agency shelters, legalizing their use for people who are unable to safely self-quarantine in their place of residence and to isolate those diagnosed with or showing symptoms of COVID-19. State-funded colleges and universities are required to hand over their vacant buildings and grounds for use under this order. Hashtag Civil War. No, I'm not going to a FEMA camp. You're not touching my kids. I'm not going in your army van. I'm not going to a FEMA camp. Hashtag Second Amendment. It's not happening. And I know there's a lot of patriots in Ohio. I don't know why, but there's a lot. And they're not going to go to a FEMA camp. Governor DeWine. What in the hell? Think about that, you guys. The governor just authorized FEMA camps for asymptomatic patients of COVID, meaning perfectly healthy people, when asymptomatic COVID is, according to the health organizations, I don't know if it was the WHO or the CDC, but one of them has admitted, and it's reported in a couple podcasts ago, it is not a thing. So in other words, the governor is saying we're going to round up free people and put them into camps. You know what I remember we did that last time? We did that with the Japanese in World War II, and it was also done with the Jews in Germany during the Holocaust. It didn't end well for either of those groups. I don't believe it's going to end well for the people of Ohio. I don't think Governor DeWine, foaming at the mouth liberal, is going to let his pro-Trump citizens off of the camp. They want to put their hands on us, you guys. Yahoo News has an article out, exclusive. White House orders end to COVID-19 airport screenings for international travelers. Order of President Trump. He said no more this tracing, contact tracing, and having to go through more TSA bureaucracy for international travelers entering in the United States. And I put those articles together because you just have a battle. We're so divided as a people, but we're also so divided in policy and in the government, where you have the Trump administration lifting restrictions due to COVID concerns and no longer taking these extra precautions, while you have Democrat governors in Ohio preparing FEMA camps for asymptomatic patients. This is not going to continue. This has got to have to reach a point where we're going to have to choose a path. We're going to have to choose liberty, or we're going to have to choose tyranny. I feel like Mel Gibson. Oh, give me freedom. The Patriot Post, shifting gears. This is my section called America Burning. Going back to the riots and to all the fun of BLM. Rochester Police Chief, entire command staff steps down. The chief and the entire command staff of the Police Department of Rochester, New York resigned on Tuesday after the death of Daniel Prude, who was put in a spit hood, died in custody. Chief LaRon Singletary has basically stated the mischaracterization and the politicization of the actions that I took after being informed of Mr. Prude's death is not based on facts and is not what I stand for. If we remember, Prude was naked in the middle of the street, high off of probably bath salts or drugs or meth or whatever, but he has a history of mental illness, drug addiction. He was asking for a gun from the police when he was being put into custody. Obviously, the man was not of sound mind, and he is now, of course, the folk hero in Rochester, New York. And the Black Lives Matter social justice warriors took to the streets to avenge the unjust death of this drug-addicted person. Now, I'm not saying that because you're drug-addicted or because you're mentally ill that your life is worth any less. What I'm saying is that the social justice warriors never take a moment to sit down and say, well, is this a truly unjust killing? You know, did he perhaps die for other reasons other than it was at the hands of police officers? It kind of goes back to George Floyd. A lot of people believe the asphyxiation and the unable to breathe was due to the fact that one, he had COVID, which affects your respiratory system, but two, he was high on methamphetamines, according to the coroner. So could we take 5 minutes, Rochester, New York, BLM? Could we take 4 minutes and just wait to see what this Daniel Prude, or whatever his name was, why he actually died? But no. The fact that it was a black man in custody with a police department immediately means that it was an unjust, racially motivated killing without any evidence of any racial prejudice. So instead of defunding the police department, which is politically difficult to do, I think the strategy from the establishment now is to put so much pressure on police departments that you're going to have, which we just reported here in Rochester, New York. You're going to have police chiefs saying, I'm done, I'm out, I can't do this. I mean, who would want that job? You literally put your life on the line every day to go deal with drug addicted people. Police officers see the worst of humanity, you guys, and you know that. They get called for child abuse cases. They get called for people running around streets naked, high on meth. You know, I mean, it's crazy what these people have to deal with. And now they're doing it being the bad guy. Now they're doing it being called racist. And some of these guys are blacks and Hispanics. It's just ridiculous. So that's the strategy. They don't need to defund the police. They're just going to make it difficult to be a police officer. The New American, Soros-linked organization, prepares for election coup, calls for mass street uprisings. And I'm going to read the first paragraph of this New American article because it really explains it better than my small brain could ever articulate for you. Give me a moment here, #GhettoPodcast. The Transition Integrity Project, an organization with ties to George... I hate ads. It's blocking it. Sorry. The Transition Integrity Project, an organization with ties to George Soros' Open Society Foundation and to the Chinese Communist Party-linked think tank Berggruen Institute, has outlined several tactics the left and deep state plan to use to secure a Biden victory in the 2020 presidential election, including mail-in voting, suppression of speech via social media censorship, and mass mobilization on America's streets. This is being called for, you guys, by a political action committee. The same political action committees that have been financing and bankrolling the protests in Portland and Detroit and throughout the United States. Election night is going to be probably one of the most dangerous nights in American history. It's going to be an explosive moment in our history, you guys. And I mean that as seriously as I can express this to you. I don't know the words to describe what we're in for on November 4th other than pray, be in a safe place, be prepared, prepsave.com, so I can plug my website. It's a place we get prepared. You guys, it's going to be crazy. Social media platforms are already moving to censor anybody who questions some of the election results. And we already have the period of uncertainty provides opportunities for unscrupulous candidates to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the process and to set up an unprecedented assault on the outcome. Quote, social media platforms should also elevate trustworthy officials and accurate information, remove lies and disinformation, and refuse to give voice to those provoking or organizing violent action. So when I read that, Mark Zuckerberg has a task on election night. He's to cast doubt on the results. He's going to censor anything that questions that narrative. We're going to have the social justice warriors activated on the streets of America on election night. We're going to have opportunities for people to be raised on platforms that aren't normally associated with the establishment to cast doubt on the election. If Trump wins, he's not going to be handed the election. The Democrats are planning to steal election night. You heard it here, probably third or fourth on Counterculture, because I realize people are starting to speak up about this now. It's incredible times to live in. The New American's also reporting more riots for September 5th. Twitter, Facebook helping Antifa, BLM, communists plan the violence. Yeah, of course. They're going to elevate Black Lives Matter. They're going to elevate quote unquote progressive voices to get people on the streets. Uh, New American calls for stripping Facebook and the social media companies of the immunity against their stripping them of the immunity against legal liability that they are granted under Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act of 1996. And I agree with that. That's how they're able to get away with this nonsense. So crazy times. Moving along, CNN thinks that the biggest threat is not BLM. It's not an attack on our democracy and our voting systems. No, 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 no. It's white supremacy. Yes, white supremacy is the most lethal threat to the United States. Department of Homeland Security draft assessment says white supremacists will remain the most persistent and lethal threat in the United States through 2021, according to the Department of Homeland Security draft documents. Not commies, not rioters, not China, who's planning an EMP attack and wipe out our entire electrical grid. That's what happens when you drink too much black coffee. Our entire electrical grid. It's none of that. It's white guys who don't like brown guys. That's the most lethal threat to America. CNN. The comedy news network. CNN. The worldwide leader in news. What a joke. Shifting gears to real news, CBN, Christian Broadcasting Network, while the United States is on fire, they're reporting 500 Ethiopian Christians were killed in targeted genocide by Muslim extremists since June. So while this is all happening, while we're arguing about Trump and Biden, Christians are just getting slaughtered around the world. And it's newsworthy. Yeah, 500 people. I mean, that's like a mini 9/11, since June. We have real discrimination happening against people who follow Jesus and believe the Bible's true. Those are the real persecuted people of the planet. That all gets ignored, okay? But I bring it up as a warning to the American church. They're coming for us. Soccer moms are not allowed to attend church in certain American cities right now because you have Black Lives Matter activists shouting them down in their Sunday best with their children, with their minivans and soccer balls in the back. Being shouted at church is pretty unprecedented in the United States, considering we were a Christian nation. But it's just the beginning. It's the beginning of the beginning of what I believe to be serious persecution of the Christian church. And it's the reason why you're starting to see a lot of your carnal cultural Christians leave the church, because they're going to join the ranks of those in the BLM movement and the Marxist groups who are going to persecute us, because they were never serious to begin with. And a lot of pastors are having dreams and visions. And my church in particular has seen half of its congregation leave since the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think that there's going to be a group of people that are going to be left behind, the true followers. And we're going to get it, and we're going to get it hard. And I would just say, endure to the end, you guys. We will endure till the end. The Barnabas Fund, an international persecution watchdog, reports hundreds of people have been killed in coordinated and door-to-door attacks, many of them targeting Christian households. The extremists, armed with guns, machetes, swords, and spears, have reportedly sought out Christian families to kill them. Some of the attackers even had lists containing the names of Christians and had received the help of local authorities to trying to find specific individuals. Christians' businesses and houses were burned down, vandalized, or destroyed by these Muslim extremists. Pray for the Ethiopian church. And I will leave you with some good news, you guys. And I'm also going to start leaving you guys with some funny news. Babylon Bee is absolutely hilarious. And you guys seen Babylon Bee? Been to Babylon Bee? Dude, these guys are so funny. So counterculture, I don't want this to be a dark, depressing podcast. I want it to be hopeful. So I'm going to bring you good news and humor at the end. And here we go to end things out. How did I do? 36 minutes. I'm getting better, you guys. Are you proud of me? Why are you guys all shy? You guys never give me any Sorry, for the podcast listeners, I'm streaming live on Facebook, and I see there's viewers, but nobody ever says anything. Is there one brave person on Facebook right now who can give me a thumbs up? You're anonymous. You can give me a thumbs up. Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. I'm gonna go eat worms. Wow. Yes. Thank you. Somebody gave me a thumbs up. Thank you, bro. Or gal, whoever you are. All right, here we go. Ending us out. 3 hit with federal charge for participating in Portland riots. Civil disorder, a federal charge that carries up to 5 years in prison for putting lasers in the eyes of police officers. That's great news. And here's really, really funny news. Responding to backlash, Netflix clarifies its content is mostly pedophilia free. Mostly. And Madden introduces throw Molotov feature. Think that's great. And U-Haul introduces armored war rigs for Californians trying to flee state's post-apocalyptic wasteland. And lastly, Netflix will now just pump septic waste straight into your living room. And this is my favorite. And I'll end with this. Cracker Jack changes its name to more politically correct Caucasian Jack. I thought that was good. So anyways, that rounds us out for Counterculture episode 59. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Everything's housed at aaronlujan.com. And take care. Peace.